Do you miss your grandmother?
I do actually, yeah, I do miss my grandmother and my grandfather, particularly being in Windsor. For me, Windsor is hers. Sometimes I'd come round and have a bit of tea with her because she had the best teas ever, so I used to get well fed.
On February 3rd, 2026, Buckingham Palace issued a restrained two-paragraph announcement that struck like a seismic blast through royal residences and courtrooms across Britain. Prince William was declared the sole heir to one of the monarchy's most guarded and historically profound private estates ever held. Not Sandringham, not Balmoral, not Windsor, something far older, something obscured, something Queen Elizabeth II had shielded for decades. When Camilla and her son Tom learned what had been reassigned and what had been intentionally withheld from them, the outrage within palace corridors surpassed anything aides had seen in decades. This is the chronicle of each property, each stipulation, each clash. From the Queen's handwritten pledges to Tom Parker Bowles's faltering business ventures to the instant Camilla stood in silence as William finalized the transfer that ended her aspirations. This is not merely a tale of succession. It is Queen Elizabeth II's ultimate, irreversible gambit. The Cedar Estate, a secret predating living memory. We start where this saga truly ignites. Not in 2026, but in 1944, amid the bleakest stretch of the Second World War, King George VI, confronting the fragile uncertainty of a nation at war, discreetly acquired an estate hidden within the Chiltern Hills, stretching across Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire. It was named the Cedar Estate, and from its first day, it was meant to vanish. No royal registry entry, no press disclosure, no ceremonial unveiling. For more than 80 years, the Cedar Estate survived only in murmured exchanges among senior courtiers, a phantom holding recognized by almost none, safeguarded fiercely by the few entrusted with its truth. And here's the question that should unsettle you. Why would a dynasty conceal an estate for 8 decades? What rested within its grounds that required such relentless secrecy? The revelation emerged in confidential briefing papers circulated to members of the Royal Correspondence Guild on the morning of February 3, 2026. What those documents detailed left even veteran royal scholars briefly without words. The Cedar Estate safeguards a private chapel featuring an etched memorial crypt honoring royal relatives who fought in wartime. Archival chambers containing 186 oak trunks packed with intimate wartime letters and classified royal exchanges. 72 previously unrevealed royal portraits, including unseen oil canvases of King George VI and Princess Margaret. And perhaps most astonishing of all, 14 sealed audio tapes capturing Queen Elizabeth II in confidential conversation with Winston Churchill, Nelson Mandela, Ronald Reagan, and Charles de Gaulle. One archivist who had dedicated decades to the royal archives summarized the trove in one haunting line. This was not, he insisted, a gallery of relics. It was the unvarnished framework of royal remembrance, a direct aperture into the monarchy's hidden conscience. Now, consider what deepens this revelation. Between 2017 and 2021, Prince William had been quietly retreating to the Cedar Estate on private weekends, not as a spectator, not as a symbolic figure. He wandered the cedar paths beside the Queen. He examined wartime letters. He meticulously organized naval reports. He restored hundreds of correspondences from World War II servicemen. He even serviced humidity systems inside the archive vaults. This was not obligation for optics. This was guardianship born of resolve. And Queen Elizabeth took note in a handwritten remark discovered within the Covenant Trust. She inscribed a simple sentence. He will inherit more than the crown. He will inherit the silence that safeguarded it. Those words were deliberate. They were a verdict. The Covenant Trust, a concealed legal citadel. Now, we must examine the legal design that enabled this succession because it is as remarkable as the property itself. The Cedar Estate does not belong to the Crown Estate. It does not sit under the Duchy of Cornwall. Instead, it is secured within a private legal instrument known as a Covenant Trust established in 2020, registered under Charter Seal 0142, and authenticated by the Queen's personal attorney, a constitutional counsel, and a notary from the Royal Archives. The trust arrived fortified with a delayed activation clause engineered to ignite only after 2 precise thresholds were crossed. The completion of the Queen's state funeral and the instant Prince William was formally acknowledged as heir to institutional responsibility. Both thresholds have now been crossed. The official declaration stated it without ornament under the provisions of the sealed covenant trust authorized by Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II in 2020. The estate identified as the Cedar Estate shall transfer in complete and exclusive guardianship to His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, effective immediately. Measured language, permanent fallout. But this is where inheritance transforms into open conflict. Because composure was not universal. Camilla and Tom, the designs never meant for daylight. Several sources have corroborated what insiders had long whispered. Queen Camilla and her son Tom Parker Bowles had been quietly, steadily, and methodically maneuvering to draw the Cedar Estate into their sphere for years. Starting in late 2024, Camilla promoted internally what she described as a Windsor Cultural Legacy Center, a concept featuring refined retreats honoring British gastronomy, literary salons spotlighting female royal narratives, and intimate historical tours through the cedar groves. It appeared dignified outwardly, yet beneath that polish, the intentions were far less nostalgic. Tom Parker Bowles envisioned something entirely different when he surveyed the Cedar Estate. He envisioned profit. Confidential memoranda examined by royal insiders reveal he had drafted plans for a Michelin-caliber tasting restaurant inside the former hunting lodge. A boutique food label titled Royal Wild offering cedar-aged cheeses, wild trout, estate honey, and seasonal Highland wines. Exclusive side events for select patrons. A revenue engine cloaked in the language of royal heritage. Then October 18, 2025 arrived, along with a leaked strategy brief that appended everything. Tom's attorneys had been assessing whether sections of the estate might be redefined under public heritage statutes, asserting that its wartime foundations warranted protected cultural designation. Such reclassification would have diluted William's sole authority and possibly paved the way for joint oversight. Consider this carefully. Does that resemble reverence for a sacred royal inheritance? Or does it resemble acquisition disguised as preservation? In November 2025, Camilla convened a discreet reception near Henley-on-Thames, assembling heritage benefactors, culinary critics, and art historians. Publicly, the gathering honored rural sustainability. Privately, accounts suggest something else. It was, according to one attendee, a rehearsal, a measured test for a hybrid stewardship framework that would grant Camilla's foundation and external financiers shared command of the Cedar Estate. William became aware of the gathering. He courteously yet unequivocally refused involvement. He upheld the Queen's intended design without hesitation. 3 weeks afterward, he triggered the Covenant Trust. Northacre Hall, the property Camilla assumed, was secured. The Cedar Estate was not the sole arena of struggle. On January 31st, 2026, the Land Registry discreetly reflected another reassignment Camilla had not foreseen. Northacre Hall, an expansive 1,200-acre heritage estate set amid Wiltshire's ancient hedgerows and Berkshire's rolling countryside. Historically an understated royal refuge, it had accommodated shooting weekends and confidential diplomatic meetings during Queen Elizabeth II's tenure. Its blend of historic stature, agricultural income, and dormant licensing privileges tied to an 800-year lineage rendered it, by commercial evaluations, an exceptionally strategic royal holding. What renders the Northacre Hall transfer extraordinary is the chronology. Records dated September 8, 2022, mere weeks before the Queen's death, disclosed that she had officially redesignated Northacre Hall from a shared Crown Estate asset to a personal sovereign possession. This allowed her to convey it privately through testament rather than by institutional succession. In Appendix R3, she inscribed, "Let Northacre remain with the child who carries the weight of our tomorrow. Let it be not only refuge, but sanctuary." The choice circumvented both Prince Charles, now king, and Princess Anne. The tremors within the inner royal circle were swift and muted, like a pebble slipping into black water at midnight. According to palace archivists, this marked the first private transfer of its nature since Queen Victoria's Highland reallocation in 1872, carried out in total secrecy. Only 2 living individuals were aware of the codicil: Lady Sarah Chatworth and the late Queen's legal counsel, Sir Alastair Denholm. The sealed packet bore 3 words across its exterior: "For the reign after me." Yet Camilla had not remained passive. Disclosed notes from a palace aide confirm that by 2023, she and Tom had been discreetly pressing to integrate Northaker Hall into a royal culinary heritage enterprise. Framed publicly as a farm-to-table renaissance, yet privately supported by luxury backers from the UAE and a Paris-based venture capital consortium. The blueprint envisioned a 5-star boutique hotel, a heritage culinary academy, and a full rebranding of the estate as an elite Windsor destination. A commercial viability report from July 2025 appraised Northaker Hall's licensing entitlements alone at more than $48 million over a decade. One courtier, speaking off record, distilled the moment with ruthless clarity. Camilla believed she had quietly secured the estate through proximity and persuasion. The Queen countered her from beyond the grave with clinical precision. What unfolded next was a meticulously staged campaign of murmurs and calculated pressure steered by Camilla's longtime fixer Maurice Lello, a retired PR strategist seasoned in palace back-channel maneuvering. Anonymous opinion essays surfaced in late 2025, hinting that the monarchy had overcommit to heritage holdings and should reconsider generational balance. In one last maneuver, Tom reportedly pursued a lease inquiry on the Northaker Southern Orchard parcel, insisting it lay fallow and underused. The Duchy of Cornwall's legal division rejected the overture immediately, invoking inheritance safeguards. Insiders characterized Camilla's response in November 2025 as a crisis of temper. Those present avoided the word anger. They chose something icier: rage at being strategically defeated by someone no longer alive. Clarence Hill Estate, the Queen's most intimate covenant. Now we reach what may be the most emotionally charged chapter of this remarkable saga. In mid-January 2026, Princess Anne undertook a meticulous audit of the Queen's private letters inside Windsor's Oak Room. What she uncovered, folded thrice and tucked inside a leather folio embossed with the initials W, William George, was a codicil unlike any the family had encountered. Clarence Hill Estate, concealed deep within the Chiltern Hills, reachable only by a discreet private drive extending 4 miles from the nearest main road. A residence discreetly acquired in 1947 by King George VI, conceived as an off-ledger reserve for direct heirs, shielded from Parliament, public oversight, and the shifting tides of royal finance. The Queen's instruction appeared in her own handwriting, precise, unwavering, and unmistakably personal. I bequeath Clarence Hill to my grandson William in absolute title and intention, unburdened, unshadowed. Let it stand beyond the Crown Estate, untouched by politics, untouched by scandal. This ground is a covenant, not a commodity. Its duty is to defend the moral thread of succession. The words untouched by scandal were deliberate. Sources suggest the Queen had grown increasingly cautious about the controversies linked to Prince Andrew and the turbulent media pursuits of Prince Harry. To Elizabeth, her inheritance demanded ethical insulation, a haven beyond rumor, revenue, or disorder. Clarence Hill would become William and Catherine's refuge, the moral and dynastic compass for the monarchy's next era. Camilla was informed of the transfer on January 20th. Insiders say she immediately convened her legal advisors at Highgrove with Tom at her side. Her son had recently endured the collapse of a major publishing agreement tied to controversy over his food brand's misuse of the royal crest. Clarence Hill held no sacred meaning for her. It represented commercial potential, and she intended to pursue it. Internal emails later exposed outlined her vision plainly. Imagine the unveiling from the Queen's garden to yours. By January 23rd, a proposal had been drafted under a freshly incorporated entity named Hill and Crown Limited with Tom installed as executive director. The strategy aimed to reposition Clarence Hill as a boutique hospitality and agricultural enterprise centered on regenerative luxury, climate resilience, and royal sustainability. Tom would emerge, in Camilla's design, as the sovereign of Green Britain, his aristocratic trajectory rooted in land rather than controversy. But the codicil had already been notarized within the royal archives. The formal conveyance to the Duchy of Cornwall Trust was complete. Hill and Crown Limited materialized 3 weeks too late. Then January 28th arrived, bringing the disclosure that shattered the scheme. An anonymous whistleblower, suspected by some to be a disenchanted former aide, transmitted the internal Hill and Crown business presentation to the Lord Chancellor's office, alleging attempted commercial encroachment upon a sealed royal legacy. The leaked files exposed everything. Branding concepts, projected luxury valuations, and renderings of Clarence Hill with corporate insignia layered across its Edwardian frontage. The reaction was swift and absolute. William confronted Camilla at Windsor during a private luncheon meant to acknowledge Catherine's recovery. Those close to the household described the exchange as concise yet crushing. William reportedly stated, "Clarence Hill will not be bottled, branded, or bartered. It is the final sanctuary of my grandmother's spirit, and I will defend it as fiercely as I defend my wife and children." Camilla departed before the meal concluded. Within 48 hours, Hill and Crown Limited was dissolved. Tom retreated from 3 scheduled public engagements, attributing his absence to stress-induced exhaustion. No official remarks followed, but within palace walls, the signal was unmistakable. King Charles, declining direct involvement in the clash, later confided in Princess, and with a remark now repeated in royal corridors. Elizabeth always recognized who would safeguard the crown, not merely display it. Greystone Downs, the place where Camilla's ambitions edged closest to disaster. Just as the fallout from Clarence Hill appeared to be fading, another front ignited. And this one eclipsed everything before it in boldness. Greystone Downs, a safeguarded estate spanning more than 400 acres of ancient woodland, crowned by a Tudor hunting lodge built in 1578 and a private stone chapel lined with 17th-century relics. Queen Elizabeth had devoted over 40 years to preserving Greystone Downs as both sanctuary and living testament to royal conscience. Granting it to William was not merely administrative, it was symbolic. He was inheriting more than a throne. He was inheriting discipline, guardianship, and restrained honor. Camilla and Tom interpreted it otherwise. Appraised at £80 million according to papers obtained from a former financial aid, Greystone Downs became their most coveted objective yet. Their blueprint was breathtaking in scale and, many would say, breathtaking in nerve. 5,000 per night eco-lodges. Exclusive farm-to-table evenings hosted by Tom personally, a members-only royal culinary consortium targeting elite patrons from the UAE and East Asia. All of it marketed as a Windsor sanctuary, a luxury label constructed atop foundations that were never theirs. Behind closed doors, Camilla's legal intermediary, Sir Piers Maulery, had started dissecting the will for any provision permitting shared oversight or heritage partnership. Any loose thread capable of loosening William's singular authority. Tom had discreetly incorporated a new holding entity in Luxembourg, Stag Crown Hospitality Limited, 3 weeks before the Queen's testament became public. Plans retrieved by palace aides detailed converting the estate chapel into a mindfulness retreat hub and refashioning the stables, once shelter to Elizabeth's cherished ponies, into a vineyard spa devoted to elite wellness. Then Princess and intercepted a confidential message exchanged between Camilla's solicitor and a peer within the House of Lords. She delivered her findings to William. Her judgment arrived in the composed, deliberate cadence those familiar with her recognize as more unsettling than fury. She isn't contesting the crown and observed. She's contesting mother's principles. William assembled a private strategy meeting with the Privy Purse. What followed was an immediate and decisive legal counterstrike. The sealed codicil release to the Royal Archives on February 3, 2026 rendered Camilla's ambitions untenable. Penned in the Queen's own script and notarized in 2021, it categorically prohibited any structural alteration, commercial adaptation, or brand exploitation of Greystone Downs without William's explicit consent. The clause stood as a pointed rebuttal, evidence that Elizabeth had foreseen resistance and fortified against it years earlier. A palace footman present during the confrontation recounted the instant Camilla unfolded the envelope stamped with the Queen's cipher. She read its contents twice without uttering a word. Then she delivered 4 words that echoed in that chamber. "Even in death, she confines me." William's reply was delivered through deed rather than declaration. On February 5th, he arrived at Greystone Downs without prior notice, joined by Princess Catherine and their 3 children. Photographers captured the Wales family tracing the icy shoreline of the estate lake at dusk. No proclamation, no briefing, no spectacle, simply a family standing upon their inheritance honoring a vow. Greenheath Estate, the £37 million revelation. If Greystone Downs marked Camilla's boldest gamble, then Greenheath Estate sealed her most stinging humiliation. Positioned southeast of Forest Lodge, Greenheath encompassed more than 500 acres of untouched woodland, adjoining an ancient Roman road, secured under a royal conservation covenant. Insiders had long speculated it could host discreet summits, protected diplomatic retreats, and world-class rehabilitation initiatives under royal auspices. Camilla desired it intensely, and her strategizing began almost immediately after Queen Elizabeth's death. She had misinterpreted the sealed clause within Elizabeth's will, presuming Greenheath denoted a ceremonial meadow or abandoned hunting terrain. She was profoundly mistaken. Greenheath was paired with a £37 million private trust, quietly accumulated through decades of calculated transfers, personally sanctioned by the Queen. A fiscal reserve expanding quietly in the background for years, invisible to anyone not directed to search for it. The revelation of this fund infuriated Tom Parker Bowles. He had long imagined a media-branded culinary wellness complex on the grounds financed by Dubai investors and a French spa consortium. Camilla had reportedly assured Tom she would leverage her Regency influence to obtain royal endorsement while King Charles remained partially withdrawn. Promotional banquets were already mapped out. High society guest lists were being composed. Organic vintages, regional produce, and duchy olive oils were chosen for showcase dinners with international dignitaries. The apparatus was in motion. Then, on January 30th, 2026, Princess Anne, representing the Crown Trust Authority, finalized the asset transfer retroactively dated to December 28, 2025. William formally assumed complete authority over Greenheath. The £37 million trust accompanied it. That evening, a black royal sedan arrived at Clarence House bearing the final documents, and something Camilla had never anticipated, a private audio recording of Queen Elizabeth herself, her voice explaining her intentions for Greenheath. The estate was to become a secure legacy zone, reserved solely for environmental education programs, child rehabilitation initiatives, and stewardship initiatives under the direct patronage of William and Catherine. Camilla immediately summoned Tom and 2 estate attorneys to a crisis meeting at Romley House that very night. Palace leaks indicate the conversation veered instantly into legal strategy. Camilla was prepared to challenge Elizabeth's mental acuity at the time of the Greenheath deed, alleging that William and Catherine, aided by influential advisors, had manipulated an elderly monarch. An audacious attack on the Queen herself. An attempt to rewrite history from inside the very family to whom it belonged. King Charles, despite his frailty, issued a private warning within 48 hours. Any attempt to undermine Elizabeth's would be treated as sedition against the Crown's memory. When the letter reached the Times on February 2nd, public outrage ignited. Pro-monarchy groups, constitutional scholars, and royal historians lined up to condemn the plot as both morally and legally indefensible. That same day, Princess Catherine quietly visited a Windsor Children's Hospice, a defining visual counterpoint. Grace and compassion standing in stark, silent opposition to Camilla's machinations. At 9:46 a.m. on February 3rd, William arrived at the Greenheath gates alone, clad in a simple navy wool coat, accompanied by a single aide. No cameras, no press, no ceremony. He signed the inaugural charter of the Greenheath Royal Future Trust, permanently closing the estate to commercial exploitation and embedding an ethical framework that mirrored Elizabeth's vision for environmental and educational stewardship. As the signing concluded, a Rolls-Royce pulled up at the estate's western boundary. Camilla emerged, dark glasses hiding her eyes, lips tight, clutching a black leather folder to her chest. She spoke no words. She approached no closer. She simply watched, silent, as a vision she could not seize unfolded before her. Tom never appeared. By evening, Camilla had cancelled the royal culinary event slated for February 4th. Her PR team released a single line: Her Majesty Queen Camilla regrets recent developments and supports the King's reaffirmation of the late Queen's legacy. Then came Oakage Estate, the final word. A sealed leather envelope embossed with Elizabeth II's royal cipher was formally delivered to Prime Minister Harriet Shawcross on the morning of February 3rd, confirming the transfer of Oakage to William. Unlike Balmoral or Sandringham, Oakage was exempt from Crown Estate rules. It was a private holding under a singular clause in the Queen's will, a pastoral fortress, an untouched expanse along the Thames forests, used by George VI for hunting and sheltering the ruins of a Tudor chapel. Valued at £18 million, though for those involved, that number was irrelevant. Oakage had been Elizabeth's personal hearth during family disputes, a place of refuge, reflection, and resolve. The cradle of William's early summers, where he first understood what it meant to belong to something far greater than himself. A final journal entry, pressed beside lavender in the estate library, spoke simply to the care of legacy and future stewardship. Even as the transfer concluded, Camilla and Tom remained silent, though whispers circulated about a possible legal appeal through the Privy Purse Committee, arguing Oakage had benefited from public funds and could be reclassified. William anticipated every angle. He ordered a full review of restoration logs and security expenditures dating back to 1953. Forensic accountants began cross-checking each line, every receipt. But Elizabeth, as always, had anticipated opposition. Her private will contained a clause titled Anticipatory Obstruction, nullifying any challenge to Oakage by anyone outside the Windsor bloodline or married into it. When, after 2010, the clause was read to senior royals in the green drawing room, absolute silence fell. Camilla stormed out. Tom reportedly cursed his lawyers. Princess Anne, having listened quietly throughout, turned to King Charles and said with perfect composure, "I always knew this day would come." That evening, William, Catherine, and their 3 children toured Oakage for the first time as its stewards. Young George, atop the ruins of the old watchtower, gazing across the frozen expanse, asked a question that those present say will linger forever. "Will this be ours forever?" William's reply was calm, measured, and absolute. "As long as we protect it." Shortly thereafter, a letter arrived from the late Queen's personal solicitor, Sir Jonathan Arbyfield. Inside was one final passage from Elizabeth herself, words that rendered every legal maneuver, every commercial scheme, every back-channel effort utterly irrelevant. If ever this estate is challenged, let it be known Oakage belongs not to power, but to patience. Let the one who carries the weight of the crown's future, not the burden of entitlement, bear it forward. Signed, Elizabeth R. Step back for a moment and take in the full scale of what Queen Elizabeth II achieved with these transfers. She didn't merely bequeath estates to her grandson. She constructed a legal fortress around him, meticulously layered, estate by estate, clause by clause, engineered to withstand every ambition, every commercial plot, every family rivalry that could have been thrown at it. She foresaw the proposals, the litigation, the public pressure campaigns. She embedded responses to all of them decades before they ever arose. From a woman in her 90s, still thinking several moves ahead, ask yourself the question that lies at the heart of it all. Why did the Queen feel this level of protection was necessary? The answer is unflattering for those who tried to manipulate her. Within her own family, within the very institution she devoted her life to, she identified actors whose priorities were not legacy, not service, not the long-term welfare of the monarchy. They were commercial. They were personal. They were about turning 7 centuries of royal heritage into a hospitality portfolio. Elizabeth chose William precisely because he was different, not ambitious for profit or public acclaim, but dedicated to stewardship, to quietly catalog wartime letters in an archival vault, to repair moisture systems in rooms no camera would ever see, to walk the cedar groves with an elderly queen, listening more than he spoke. Stewardship, that was the quality she wove into every covenant, and she knew it was rare. William's response to every attempt to circumvent the Queen's wishes has been consistent, calm, and utterly faithful to the woman who chose him. No public outrage. No press conferences. No statements. He signed charters. He walked with his children. He let the legal architecture his grandmother built speak on his behalf, and it spoke louder than any human voice could. As dawn broke over Windsor Great Park on February 3rd, 2026, sunlight spilling across frost-kissed hedges, a new chapter of royal history had been quietly written. Not with ceremony or proclamation, but through sealed trusts, notarized codicils, and a grandmother's handwritten certainty. William walked the estates, now fully his own. George bounced alongside him, full of questions about chapels, hidden groves, and the meaning of history. Charlotte clutched a leather-bound journal, absorbing every detail. William answered each question with the patience of a man who understood, perhaps better than anyone alive, what it truly means to be entrusted with something precious. Camilla's ambitions were not merely defeated, they were rendered structurally impossible. Not by confrontation, not by palace politics, but by the preemptive brilliance of a sovereign who spent decades watching, calculating, preparing. Every scheme Tom Parker Bowles drafted, every back-channel lobbying campaign run by Camilla's advisors, every probe into shared custodianship, every rebranding plan, every holding company, every mock-up with corporate logos airbrushed over Edwardian facades, anticipated, neutralized, silenced. As a senior footman who served both Queen Elizabeth and now William put it with quiet finality, this was not just a house. It was the Queen's final chess move. And in the grand tradition of the woman who made it, the move was perfect. For William, these estates are not trophies. They are responsibilities, and he has never once suggested otherwise. For Camilla and Tom, the battle is over. The estates are sealed. The covenants unassailable. The Queen's voice, preserved in letters, in legal clauses, in private recordings, has spoken with a clarity no living advocate could match. Legacy, Elizabeth understood, is not measured in wealth, influence, or the size of a commercial portfolio. It is measured in stewardship, integrity, and the courage to protect what matters, even from those who stand closest. William received the estates, the mission, and something far more enduring, the absolute certainty that the woman who knew him best trusted him most. This chapter may be closed, but the story of what William does with the trust he's been given has only just begun.